Sarah Jenkins was never the type of woman who dreamed about her wedding day as a little girl. She was practical, focused on her career as a pediatric nurse, and didn't believe in fairy tales. That all changed when she met Michael Reeves 3 years ago at the hospital where they both worked. Michael worked in the hospital administration, and their paths crossed in the cafeteria one rainy Tuesday afternoon. The cafeteria was crowded that day, and Sarah had nowhere to sit. She stood there with her tray, scanning the room, when Michael waved her over to his table. He had a kind smile and warm brown eyes that instantly made Sarah feel comfortable. "You look like you needed a place to sit," he said simply, pushing out the chair across from him with his foot. Sarah thanked him and sat down. They talked for 30 minutes straight, forgetting about their food going cold. Sarah learned that Michael loved hiking, had a golden retriever named Cooper, and volunteered at the local animal shelter on weekends. She found herself laughing more than she had in months. After that day, they kept running into each other around the hospital. Sarah began to suspect these meetings weren't entirely accidental, especially when Michael started appearing on her floor with paperwork that could have easily been emailed. The other nurses noticed too, teasing her whenever he left. Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. Michael arrived with a single yellow daisy, not a rose, which Sarah thought was sweet. He remembered her mentioning during their cafeteria conversation that daisies were her favorite. The date lasted for hours, neither wanting the night to end. Over the next year, their relationship grew stronger. They faced challenges together. Sarah's father's health scare, Michael's career uncertainty when the hospital announced potential layoffs. Through it all, they became each other's support system. On their second anniversary, Michael took Sarah hiking in the mountains. At the summit, with the sun setting behind them, he asked her to marry him. The ring was his grandmother's, a vintage piece with a small diamond surrounded by tiny sapphires. Sarah cried as she said yes, surprising herself with the strength of her emotions. They decided on a small wedding at Michael's parents' lake house with just 80 guests, close friends and family only. Sarah's mother Janet threw herself into the planning, perhaps making up for Sarah's lack of wedding enthusiasm growing up. Sarah was happy to let her mother take charge, caring more about the marriage than the wedding itself. But there was a shadow over their happiness. Sarah's father, William, had passed away just 6 months after she and Michael started dating. He had gotten to meet Michael a few times and had given his approval, telling Sarah privately that Michael was a good man with honest eyes. Sarah treasured those words but felt the ache of knowing her father wouldn't walk her down the aisle. As the wedding date approached, Sarah couldn't help feeling both excitement and sadness. She tried to focus on the joy of marrying Michael, but sometimes at night, she would cry quietly, missing her dad. Michael would hold her during these moments, not trying to fix her grief, but simply being there. What Sarah didn't know was that Michael had been working on something special for months, a surprise that would make their wedding day unforgettable in a way she could never imagine. A surprise that would bring her father's presence to their special day in the most unexpected way. 3 months before the wedding, Michael started acting strangely. Sarah often caught him ending phone calls abruptly when she entered the room. Sometimes he would disappear for hours on weekends with vague explanations about wedding errands. Sarah tried not to worry, but doubts began to creep into her mind. "Do you think he's having second thoughts?" Sarah asked her best friend and maid of honor, Tina, during their lunch break at the hospital. Tina rolled her eyes. "That man is crazy about you. He probably has some wedding surprise he's planning." Sarah wanted to believe that, but the secrecy continued. One evening, she came home early from a shift to find Michael huddled over his laptop with Janet, Sarah's mother. They quickly closed it when she walked in. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Sarah asked, setting down her bag. "Just going over some wedding details with Michael," Janet said too quickly, exchanging a glance with him. "What details?" Sarah asked, feeling left out of her own wedding planning. Michael stood up and wrapped his arms around her. "Just boring stuff. How was your day? You look tired." His change of subject was obvious, but Sarah was too exhausted to push it. That night, she lay awake wondering what they were hiding. The mystery deepened when Sarah overheard Michael on the phone with her Uncle Robert, her father's brother. "Yes, I found the old tapes," Michael was saying. "The quality isn't great, but we might be able to clean it up." When Sarah asked about the call, Michael claimed it was about borrowing speakers for the wedding reception. She knew he wasn't telling the truth, but something in his expression, a mixture of excitement and nervousness, made her decide to trust him. 2 weeks before the wedding, Sarah's cousin Emma visited from out of town. Sarah walked into the kitchen to find Emma showing Michael old family photo albums. "What's going on?" Sarah asked. Emma closed the album quickly. "Nothing. Just showing Michael your embarrassing childhood photos." "Let me see which ones," Sarah said, reaching for the album. Michael smoothly stood up. "Actually, I need to pick up Cooper from the groomer. Emma, can you bring those things we talked about later?" Sarah watched them exchange meaningful looks, feeling like everyone was in on a secret except her. Later that week, during her bridal shower, Sarah opened a gift from Michael, a beautiful pearl necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. The card read, "Something old, something borrowed from your family's history. I know how much family means to you. This is just the beginning of the surprises." Sarah felt tears well up. The necklace had been lost years ago during a move. Michael must have tracked it down through distant relatives. "How did he find this?" she asked her mother. Janet smiled mysteriously. "That man has been on a mission. He's been calling family members you haven't spoken to in years." The night before the wedding, during the rehearsal dinner, Michael stood to make a toast. "Tomorrow is about love and family," he said, looking directly at Sarah. "Some family members can't be with us physically, but they're never truly gone." His voice cracked slightly, and Sarah knew he was thinking about her father. That night, staying at her mother's house as per tradition, Sarah couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with thoughts about the wedding, about Michael's strange behavior, and about her father. She missed him terribly and wished he could see her marry the man he had approved of. Sarah had no idea that in just a few hours, Michael's secret would be revealed. A secret that had taken months of planning, dozens of phone calls, and the help of almost everyone she knew. A secret that would bring her to tears in the most beautiful way possible. The morning of the wedding arrived with perfect sunshine streaming through the windows of Janet's house. Sarah woke up feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. As she sat up in her childhood bed, she instinctively reached for the empty space beside her where Michael would normally be. "Today's the day," she whispered to herself, brushing her fingers against the pearl necklace on the nightstand. The house quickly filled with activity. Tina arrived with coffee and bagels, followed by the hairstylist and makeup artist. Sarah's two other bridesmaids, her cousins Rachel and Lisa, bustled around arranging flowers and steaming dresses. "No peeking at your phone," Tina warned, taking Sarah's cell away. "No communication with Michael until the ceremony. It's bad luck." Sarah laughed. "Since when are you superstitious?" Tina exchanged a quick glance with Janet. "Just following traditions today." What Sarah didn't know was that Michael was already at the lake house, overseeing the final setup of his surprise. He had barely slept, going over every detail multiple times with Sarah's uncle Robert and his best man, Jack. "Are you sure the projector works?" Michael asked for the third time that morning. "Yes, tested it twice," Jack assured him. "The screen is hidden behind those curtains. No one will see it until the right moment." Michael nodded, checking his watch. "And the video file?" "Backed up in 3 different places," Robert said, patting Michael's shoulder. "Relax, son. Everything's going to be perfect." Back at Janet's house, as the makeup artist applied the final touches to Sarah's face, Janet stepped in with a small blue box. "I found this in your father's things," she said softly. "He was saving it for your wedding day." Sarah opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a small heart charm. A note in her father's handwriting read, "For my Sarah on her wedding day, I'll always be with you." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, threatening to ruin her makeup. "Careful," the makeup artist said, quickly dabbing under Sarah's eyes. "He knew he might not be here," Sarah whispered, looking at her mother. Janet nodded, her own eyes glistening. "He prepared little things before he got too sick. He wanted to be part of your special days, even if he couldn't be here in person." As Sarah fastened the bracelet around her wrist, she felt a sense of her father's presence wash over her. It gave her strength as she stepped into her wedding dress, a simple but elegant gown with lace sleeves and a modest train. When she was fully dressed, Janet placed a hand over her mouth, tears flowing freely. "You look just like I imagined you would. Your father would be so proud." The bridesmaids all dabbed at their eyes, careful not to smudge their makeup. Something old, Tina said, pointing to the pearl necklace. Something new, Rachel added, gesturing to the dress. Something borrowed, Lisa said, touching the pearl earrings loaned by Janet. And something blue, Sarah finished, looking down at her father's bracelet with its small blue stone in the heart charm. The photographer captured these moments. Sarah looking out the window toward the lake where Michael waited, Janet helping adjust the veil, the bridesmaids surrounding Sarah with love and support. When it was time to leave for the ceremony, Sarah took a deep breath. Uncle Robert arrived to drive them to the lake house and would walk her down the aisle in her father's place. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. Sarah nodded, touching the bracelet for courage. "I just wish Dad could see this." Robert smiled mysteriously. Your father had a way of making his presence felt when it mattered most. Sarah had no idea how true those words would prove to be, or that Michael had spent months ensuring that her father would, in a way, be present for the most important day of her life. The drive to the lake house was quiet. Sarah stared out the window, watching familiar scenery pass by. The lake house belonged to Michael's parents, who had offered it for the wedding because of its beautiful views and special meaning to the family. Michael had spent summers there as a child, and it was where he had first told Sarah he loved her during a weekend getaway. "You doing okay?" Uncle Robert asked, glancing at her as he drove. Sarah nodded, touching her father's bracelet. "Just thinking about Dad. He really liked Michael, you know." "I know," Robert replied. "They only met a few times, but William said he was a good man." "He told me Michael had honest eyes," Sarah said with a small smile. Robert chuckled. "That sounds like my brother. Always judging people by their eyes." As they rounded the final curve in the road, the lake came into view, sparkling in the afternoon sun. Sarah could see white chairs set up on the lawn leading down to the water, with an arch covered in flowers at the end of the aisle. Cars lined the driveway, and guests in colorful dresses and suits mingled on the grass. Robert parked behind the house, where Sarah wouldn't be seen by the guests or, most importantly, by Michael. Janet and the bridesmaids were waiting, having arrived in a separate car. "Everything is ready," Janet said, adjusting Sarah's veil one last time. "The guests are seated, and Michael is waiting at the altar." What Janet didn't mention was that Michael had been checking his watch nervously for the past 20 minutes, conferring with Jack about technical details, and peeking at a small remote control in his pocket. In the room that had been set up as a bridal suite, Sarah took a moment alone. She looked at herself in the full-length mirror, hardly recognizing the woman in the white dress. She had never been one for fancy clothes or makeup, preferring the practical scrubs she wore at work. But today, she looked like something from a dream. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "It's time, sweetheart," Janet called softly. Sarah took a deep breath and opened the door. The bridesmaids were lined up in their pale blue dresses, holding small bouquets of white and yellow flowers. Tina handed Sarah her bouquet, a larger version with daisies, her favorite. "Remember to walk slowly," Janet reminded her, "and breathe." The small wedding party made their way to the back of the assembled chairs. The musicians, a string quartet from the local university, began playing when they saw the bride arrive. The guests stood and turned. From her position, Sarah could see Michael standing at the altar. Their eyes met across the distance, and his face broke into a smile that made her heart skip. Beside him stood Jack, and next to Jack was a small table with something covered by a cloth. The bridesmaids began their procession one by one. As each one reached the front, they took their places opposite Jack. Then it was Sarah's turn. Uncle Robert offered his arm. "Ready?" Sarah nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. As the music changed to the wedding march, they began to walk. Sarah tried to follow her mother's advice to walk slowly, but it was hard not to rush toward Michael. She barely noticed the guests smiling at her, some wiping tears away. With each step, she felt a strange mixture of joy and sadness. Joy to be marrying Michael, but sadness that her father wasn't there to walk with her. She squeezed Uncle Robert's arm, grateful for his presence. When they reached the front, Robert placed Sarah's hand in Michael's and stepped back. Michael's eyes were bright with love and something else. Anticipation. "You look beautiful," he whispered, squeezing her hands. The officiant, a friend of Michael's family, began the ceremony. Sarah tried to focus on the words, but she kept noticing Michael glancing at Jack and the covered object on the table. Something was definitely going on. As the officiant asked them to face each other for the vows, Sarah whispered, "What are you up to?" Michael just smiled. "You'll see very soon." The ceremony continued with a gentle breeze blowing across the lake. Sarah and Michael stood facing each other, hands joined, as the officiant spoke about love and commitment. Sarah noticed that Michael seemed distracted, his eyes occasionally darting to Jack or to the mysterious covered object on the table. "Michael and Sarah have chosen to write their own vows," the officiant announced, stepping back slightly. Michael went first, pulling a folded paper from his pocket with shaking hands. "Sarah," he began, his voice stronger than Sarah expected. "From the moment you sat down across from me in that hospital cafeteria, I knew you were special. You've made these past 3 years the happiest of my life." He paused, looking directly into her eyes. "I promise to be your partner and best friend, to support your dreams, to make you laugh when you're sad, and to love you through all of life's challenges. I promise to honor the past that shaped you and to help build the future that awaits us." Sarah noticed the unusual emphasis he placed on honor the past. There was something meaningful in the way he said it, something that made Jack nod slightly from his position beside Michael. When it was Sarah's turn, she unfolded her own paper and began reading her vows. Her voice trembled at first, but grew stronger as she continued. "Michael, you came into my life when I wasn't looking for love, but somehow you were exactly what I needed. You've been my rock through the hardest times and my biggest cheerleader through the good ones." As she spoke, she noticed Michael blinking rapidly, fighting back tears. His emotion made her own eyes well up. "I promise to be patient when you leave your socks on the floor," she continued, earning light laughter from the guests. "To respect your need for quiet mornings, to cheer for your favorite sports teams even when they're losing, and to love you completely for the rest of our lives." After they exchanged vows, the officiant asked for the rings. Jack stepped forward, producing 2 simple gold bands from his pocket. Michael took Sarah's ring and slid it onto her finger, repeating the words prompted by the officiant. Sarah did the same, noticing how Michael's hand trembled slightly in hers. "By the power vested in me," the officiant began the traditional closing words, but to Sarah's surprise, Michael raised his hand slightly. "Before we conclude," Michael said, his voice now clearly nervous, "there's something important I need to do." The guests murmured in confusion. This wasn't part of the rehearsed ceremony. Sarah looked questioningly at Michael, but he just gave her a reassuring smile. Michael turned to Jack, who nodded and stepped toward the covered object on the table. With a supple movement, Jack removed the cloth, revealing a small wooden box with an intricate design carved into its lid. "Sarah," Michael said, his voice soft but clear enough for everyone to hear, "when I asked you to marry me, I promised to love all of you, including your past and the people who made you who you are today." Sarah felt her heart begin to race. What was happening? Michael gently took her hands again. "I know how much you missed your father today, how much you wished he could be here." Tears immediately sprang to Sarah's eyes at the mention of her father. In the front row, Janet was already dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Michael continued, "I couldn't find a way to bring him here physically, but with the help of your family and friends, I found a way to make sure his presence is felt in this moment." Michael nodded to Jack, who stepped forward with the wooden box. "This was your father's," Michael explained. "Your mother found it in the attic last year." Sarah recognized it now, her father's memory box, where he kept special mementos and keepsakes. "Sarah," Michael said softly, squeezing her hands, "I need you to turn around for a moment." Sarah looked at Michael with confusion. "Turn around?" In the middle of their wedding ceremony, she glanced at the officiant, who nodded encouragingly. "Trust me," Michael whispered, squeezing her hands one more time before letting go. Taking a deep breath, Sarah slowly turned away from Michael to face the lake. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just the sparkling water, the trees along the shore, and the blue sky above. Then she noticed movement behind the rows of seated guests. Jack and Robert were quickly pulling back what appeared to be a large white sheet, revealing a screen that had been hidden from view. Sarah hadn't noticed it during the rehearsal the day before. Her heart began to beat faster as she realized this must be what Michael had been planning in secret. The screen remained blank for a moment. The guests turned in their chairs, looking between Sarah and the screen with anticipation, Even the musicians had stopped playing, creating a silence filled only by the gentle lapping of water against the shore and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. Then the screen flickered to life. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. There on the screen, larger than life, was her father's face. William Jenkins smiled directly at the camera, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners just as Sarah remembered. He looked healthy in the video, clearly filmed before his illness had taken its toll. He wore his favorite blue button-down shirt, the one he had always called his special occasion shirt. "Hello, Sarah." Her father's voice filled the air, slightly tinny through the speakers but unmistakably his. "If you're watching this, then it's your wedding day, and I'm not there to walk you down the aisle." Tears immediately spilled down Sarah's cheeks. She barely registered the collective gasp from the guests or her mother's soft sob from the front row. "I asked your mother to record this when we first got my diagnosis," William continued. "The doctors said I had a few years, but I wanted to be prepared just in case. A father thinks about walking his daughter down the aisle from the day she's born, you know." Sarah felt her knees weaken. Uncle Robert quietly appeared beside her, offering his arm for support, which she gratefully took. "I don't know who you're marrying today," William said with a small laugh, "but I hope he's worthy of you. I hope he makes you laugh the way your mother always made me laugh. I hope he challenges you and supports you and loves every part of you, even the stubborn parts." The guests chuckled softly, and Sarah managed a watery smile. Her father had always teased her about her stubborn streak. "I'm sorry I can't be there to shake his hand or dance with you or give one of those father of the bride speeches that make everyone cry. But I want you to know that I'm there in spirit. I'm watching over you today and always." William's image shifted slightly as he adjusted in his seat. He leaned closer to the camera, his expression serious now. "And to the man who is marrying my daughter." He paused, pointing his finger at the camera in the mock stern way he often did when making an important point. Sarah felt rather than saw Michael step up beside her. He slipped his arm around her waist, supporting her as they both watched the screen. "Take care of my girl," William continued. "Love her completely. Be patient when she works too hard. Remember that she hates surprises but secretly loves them. Know that she's stronger than she thinks she is." Sarah leaned into Michael, overwhelmed by the flood of emotions. How had her father known exactly what to say to her future husband, years before she had even met Michael? "And Sarah," William's voice softened again. "Be happy, baby girl. That's all I've ever wanted for you." The video continued, but Sarah could barely see through her tears. The father she had missed so desperately on this important day was somehow here, speaking to her, giving her the message she had needed to hear. The video of William continued, and Sarah stood transfixed, tears streaming down her face. Michael kept his arm firmly around her waist, supporting her as they watched together. "I've been thinking about what wisdom I should pass on," William said from the screen. "What important father advice I should give you on your wedding day." He smiled, that crooked smile Sarah had inherited from him. "But the truth is, you already know everything important. You've always had a good head on your shoulders." Sarah let out a small laugh through her tears. Her father had said that phrase to her so many times growing up. The image changed suddenly, and Sarah gasped again. Now the screen showed a much younger William, holding a tiny baby wrapped in a pink blanket. "That's you, one day after you were born," William's voice narrated over the old footage. "Your mother and I had no idea what we were doing, but you were patient with us." The video continued with clips from Sarah's childhood, her first steps across their small living room, William holding her hands, her 5th birthday party with a lopsided cake he had insisted on baking himself, Sarah at 10, riding a bike with William running alongside. With each clip, the guests made soft sounds of appreciation. Many were openly crying now. Janet had moved to stand near Sarah, her own tears falling freely. "I collected these videos over the years," William's voice explained. "Always thought we'd watch them together when you got married. Since I can't be there in person, I wanted to give you this instead." The scenes shifted to Sarah's high school graduation, with William beaming proudly as she accepted her diploma. Then her college graduation, where he had embarrassed her by cheering too loudly when her name was called. Sarah felt a fresh wave of tears. These memories were precious to her, but seeing them now, on her wedding day, they took on new meaning. She reached for her mother's hand, needing the connection. The final clip showed William sitting in their family backyard, the evening sun casting a golden light over him. He looked directly at the camera, as if he could see through time to this very moment. "I don't know what the future holds," he said softly. "I don't know what challenges you'll face or what joys you'll experience. But I know you, Sarah Elizabeth Jenkins. I know your heart, and I know you have what it takes to build a beautiful life." He paused, visibly emotional. "I may not be there to walk you down the aisle today, but I'm walking with you every day in spirit. I'm in the strength you show when things get hard. I'm in the kindness you show to others. I'm in the laugh that sounds just like mine." Sarah felt Michael squeeze her waist gently. She turned slightly to look at him, seeing tears in his eyes too. "One last thing," William said, drawing their attention back to the screen. "There's an old tradition in our family. On a daughter's wedding day, her father gives her a piece of advice to carry into her marriage." Sarah held her breath. She hadn't known about this tradition. "My advice to you, Sarah, is simple. Choose love every day. Choose it when it's easy, and especially when it's hard. Choose to see the best in each other. Choose forgiveness. Choose laughter." William smiled one last time. "I love you, baby girl. Be happy. That's all that matters." The screen faded to black, and for a moment, complete silence fell over the gathering. Then, softly at first but growing stronger, applause began to spread through the guests. Not just polite applause, but the kind that comes from witnessing something truly moving. Sarah turned to Michael, her makeup completely ruined by tears, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. "How did you?" she began, but couldn't finish. "Your mom found the DVD in his things last year," Michael explained softly. "She showed it to me, and we've been working on restoring it and adding the old videos. Your Uncle Robert had a lot of the childhood footage." "That's what all the secret meetings were about?" Sarah asked, suddenly understanding his mysterious behavior of the past months. Michael nodded, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I wanted your father to be here with us today." The officiant stepped forward gently, giving Sarah and Michael a moment to compose themselves. The guests were still wiping away tears, touched by the surprise tribute to William. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "Choose love every day." "Shall we continue?" the officiant asked softly. Sarah nodded, turning back to face Michael. She looked at him with new eyes, seeing not just the man she loved, but someone who understood her deeply enough to give her this incredible gift. "By the power vested in me," the officiant continued, his voice carrying across the now quiet gathering, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Michael, you may kiss your bride." Michael cupped Sarah's face gently in his hands, wiping away the last of her tears with his thumbs. "I love you," he whispered before kissing her. The guests broke into applause and cheers. "I present to you, for the first time, Mr. and Mrs. Michael and Sarah Reeves," the officiant announced. Hand in hand, they walked back down the aisle as husband and wife. Sarah noticed how many of the guests were still dabbing at their eyes. Even Uncle Robert, who prided himself on being tough, looked emotional. The reception was held on the other side of the lake house, where tables had been set up under strings of twinkling lights. As evening fell, the setting sun cast a golden glow over everything, making the moment feel magical. During dinner, friends and family took turns giving speeches. Tina told funny stories about Sarah's early days with Michael. Jack shared tales of Michael's spending weeks searching for the right editor to restore William's video to its best quality. When it was time for their first dance, Sarah and Michael moved to the center of the wooden dance floor that had been built specially for the occasion. "I have one more surprise," Michael said as the music began. Sarah laughed, shaking her head. "I don't think my heart can take any more surprises today." "This one's small, I promise," Michael said, nodding to the DJ. The song that began to play wasn't the one they had practiced dancing to. Instead, it was Unforgettable by Nat King Cole, the song William used to dance to with Sarah when she was a little girl, standing on his feet in their living room. "Your mom told me it was your special song with him," Michael explained as they began to sway to the music. Sarah rested her head on Michael's shoulder, overwhelmed by his thoughtfulness. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything. For finding a way to bring him here." As they danced, Sarah felt a strange sense of peace wash over her. The sadness that had lingered in her heart at her father's absence was still there, but it was now mixed with gratitude and joy. William might not have been physically present, but his love and wisdom had been shared with everyone. Later in the evening, as Sarah stood chatting with guests, Janet approached with a small package. "This is the last part," she said, handing it to her daughter. "Your father prepared it before he passed. He asked me to give it to you at the end of your wedding day." With trembling fingers, Sarah unwrapped the package. Inside was a small journal bound in soft leather. On the first page, in her father's handwriting, was a note. "For the days ahead, the good ones and the hard ones. A place to write down the moments you choose love. Start with today." Sarah showed the journal to Michael, who wrapped his arm around her. Together, they found a quiet moment away from the celebration to write their first entry. Michael handed her a pen. "What should we write?" Sarah thought for a moment, then began to write. "Today, we learned that love transcends time and space. Today, we felt the presence of those who couldn't be with us physically. Today, we chose love, and we always will." As the celebration continued around them, with laughter and music filling the air, Sarah looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the night sky. Somewhere, she felt certain, her father was watching and smiling.